It gives me great pleasure to introduce someone from the British Isles to the stage, a Scotsman no less. Please welcome Kevinjohn Gallager.
How are you doing,
Kevin,
sir?
it's good to see you.
Thank you very much, man.
Thanks for getting here. I understand you've had a travel nightmare.
Yes, I have enjoyed talking to KLM for 3 days.
Excellent. Well, I think enjoyed is probably stretching it. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about where you're from and also what you're going to talk about today?
Well, unsurprisingly, I'm Scottish. I thought the kilt would be a bit of a giveaway, but two people on the way in have asked me where it's from, so it's a good thing to clear up. I suppose I always tell people I'm a failed developer. I like to admit that up front, what my failings are. And about 5 years ago, I set up a consultancy, Pure Web Brilliant, which is Europe's only pure digital transformation consultancy. Trying to get through the message of how simple digital transformation is and how every company can take it on without any real cost or long-term expense in terms of time.
Fantastic. Looking forward to it. Stage is all yours.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Cheers. Morning, everyone. I think the very first thing that I should do is apologize because I have absolutely lied to every one of you. And this is not really a talk about digital transformation, although there is a little bit of that. This is actually a talk about communication. And our clicker is a little slow. So one of my heroes is a guy called Tony Robbins, and he has this wonderful quote which resonated with me when I was working at Microsoft to the point that it made me quit my job. And this is, the quality of my life is the quality of my communication. And just the time he said it, I thought, I get that. It's the ability of us talking to other people talking to us, but more importantly about how we talk to ourselves. And from a personal standpoint, I thought that really works from an organization. The point of an organization is not just how we talk to the customers and how customers talk to ourselves. It's actually about how we do things internally, how our staff talk to each other, how our managers talk to each other. It's not just about customer interaction all the time. Which brings me on to the key part of this. We can see why it's about communication. What is digital transformation? It's a great question because so many times over the last 5 years, and the reason I set up my little consultancy, some of the bigger consultancies out there, and you see it a lot on Business Insider and Inc. and Forbes, have these great, huge articles on digital transformation being about how to talk to the customer and your 19-point plan for social media world domination. And the reality is that digital transformation is something that's really been around since the 50s and 60s and hasn't always involved computers. So I really want to keep bringing that back because actually with the advent of social media and mobile and computers and all the rest of it, we are able to make it a much more simple process. So we're going to do this in a step-by-step way. The first thing is, what is digital? And this being a very digital conference, our first thought is, it's mobile, it's about computers, it's all the rest of it. But digital itself as a word means something really simple. Digital is data expressed in simple binary units. Right here. So that means ones and zeros, yes and no's, it's black or white. It's something that is absolutely testable, it's absolutely clear from anyone to see. The difference between digital and analog is just like a clock. A clock has multiple states between the 0 and the 1. A digital, we don't, it's 0 or 1. From a purely business perspective, this is brilliant because how many times have you asked someone, is that job done? And they've said, kind of. How many times have you said, KLM, where is my bag? And they say, we're not really sure. From a purely business perspective, moving things to digital so that it's testable, regardless of how you test it, I'm not just talking about code, makes your whole process much easier to make sure it works. Transformation, the second bit of it, a fundamental or core change that cannot be reversed. The two examples I use often are, the caterpillar going into the butterfly, or if you light a match, although you get a great flame from it, there's no way that match is ever going back together. The key point about this is that it is a change that cannot be reversed. And there's great examples of that right now. So the most obvious one is Apple. Apple started off as a hardware and software company for computers. There is no way Apple is doing anything from now that does not involve phones. It's still, the actual computer market of Apple still only counts for about 4% of their revenue, and they only have 7% of the PC market, regardless of what the marketing actually says. The Western Union started off sending mail. It was actually a post office until 30 years ago. But the Western Union transformed itself into a business that sends money. At this point in time, no one will ever use Western Union again to send a telegram because it's not the 1900s. Truthfully, a transformation in a business is one that cannot be changed, and it must be a fundamental difference. And this is the key point to digital transformation, which is this. My definition of digital transformation: removing friction and uncertainty from the smallest of processes and replacing it with data-driven, repeatable patterns. My hero, Tony Robbins, that you saw at the start, has a phrase about patterns of excellence. And it's a phrase I absolutely love because a lot of the time, what we hear is best practices. Oh, it's best practice to use Twitter Bootstrap for code. Oh, it's best practice to use these hashtags on Twitter and Instagram. Or it's best practice, best practice. That phrase itself is wrong because it is not contextual to what your business, your life, your project, your processes are about. The idea that there is one singular best practice for everything you do is absolutely nonsense. What there are for each and every one of you, and it's individual for each and every one of you, is having a repeatable pattern of excellence. And I think the next slide just bolds that, actually. But this is great. The best way to enact digital transformation, and it can be in your processes, your projects, your programs, your organizations, and your life, is to break each step of a process down to a point where you can remove friction and uncertainty. So you see clearly a 1 or 0, is it done or not done? Is it good, is it bad? And you can move on from there. Once everything's broken down into really, really simple steps that are chained along, it doesn't really matter where something in that supply line fails. You then just replace the small bit over and over. So let me give some great examples. And these are very modern ones. I've gone for them for a very particular reason. Uber and Lyft are two taxi companies, for want of a better phrase. I think Lyft is still just in the US just now, but Uber is all over the world. So Uber have absolutely blown Lyft away, even though Lyft had a much bigger market share in their core markets over the first 2 years. Now, Uber is constantly used as an example of a unicorn business, one that has high growth, one that has great user interaction. But the reality is, Uber didn't do anything different or new. It wasn't the first taxi company. We've had taxi companies for 400 years. It's not the first app to accept a credit card. It's not the first to crowdsource drivers. Actually, Amazon have been doing a bit of that for years. It's not the first to show driver information. Uber did not do anything different on its own. But Uber were the first app out there from a taxi and logistical perspective to remove friction and make every step really, really small and simple. Lyft, on the other hand, did this. I don't know how many of you guys know this, but in order to get out of the Lyft cab, you must fist bump the driver. He will not let you out of the cab until you've done it. You've paid your money, he's driven you to the location, but there's that additional added friction step that some marketing person thought would be really, really cool. Also, the Lyft cars all come with this little mustache, which again was great for an initial branding, but actually nothing to do with the core business. That's not a wonderful step. Whereas for Uber, they don't brand their cars, they just make sure they're Priuses or they're hybrids or something else. Everything was a nice, simple step to remove friction and give you the best experience. Google and Yahoo, this one's almost 10 years old, and especially given how their business models have changed, it's crazy interesting from where they started from. So Marissa Mayer, who many of you will now know is the CEO of Yahoo, she was originally the 4th or 5th hire at Google. And she was famous at Google for actually sorting out and bringing in, even though they were only a 4-person company, this huge digital transformation change. And not one of the things she brought in was actually about computers. It was about interaction. This is the Yahoo homepage and the Google homepage 3 days after the Google homepage launched. Straight away we have what was at the time the market leader with a 90% share. That is a very busy search engine because that is what customers were used to. This is what Google went with after Miss Marissa Mayer's intervention. She removed everything from the homepage. She broke everything down into tiny little steps. If you came to the Google homepage, it was because you wanted to search and nothing more. You wanted to type something in. That's how searching worked. It removed every single bit of friction, with the exception of the I'm feeling lucky button, which is still around today for some unknown reason. Yahoo, on the other hand, persisted with this model for the next 4 years, and its market share plummeted from the 90% from 99 to 2003 when it was down at about 20%. Because it did not simplify, it did not remove friction from the customer, it did not remove friction from its internal processes. There's a really great quote from Marissa Mayer. Actually, someone said it about her. But she had this great rule that she brought in on day 2 at Google, where she said for any given Google web page, and now for any given Google app, you should count the number of fonts, the number of colors, and the number of font size changes. And you give them each a point. If the number of points in your page or in your app is greater than 5, then you must redesign it, because it is overly complicated. It causes friction. It means you're trying to do too much on the one page. And the reason that Marissa got taken from an engineering position in Google to the CEO of Yahoo is because she absolutely understood that the key to digital transformation is breaking everything down into small, unobtrusive, and frictionless steps. This one is my my little personal favorite. This is a great story of mine. This to me is the best example of digital transformation ever. And it does not involve one single computer. And that just blows my mind because it's actually from the 1980s. It started in the 1970s, really. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with the 1980s legendary rock band that is Van Halen. Is that well known here? There's one. Okay, there's two. That's awesome. Great, thank you. That makes my life slightly easier. For those that don't know, there was a huge change in the music industry from the end of the 70s to the start of the 80s, when the huge stadium tours that came before from the likes of Led Zeppelin and the Beatles had all gone away, and there was this new wave of bands coming through who had brought huge boards like this and huge screens and all the rest of it. And the challenge that was bringing was, as these bands and these acts were moving from smaller venues to the larger venues, what they found was that the larger venues were not giving them the same respect, thinking they were a smaller band. Or more importantly, they weren't paying enough attention to the safety concerns for setting up all this brand new equipment, brand new lighting, everything, all the rigs that go along with it. So Van Halen did something really, really clever after a speaker rig fell on one of their roadies. They complained bitterly to the venue, "Did you not see our very specific instructions?" In which case the venue said, "Yeah, of course we read them," which we all know means we kind of read them. So Van Halen did this great thing. This is an actual photo of the Van Halen rider from 1981, which I'm sorry, it's really, really blurry. You guys might not be able to read it. But it has something really super interesting in it. As a list of munchies, the third one in, and it's not hidden, it's underlined, it says M&Ms, in brackets, warning, absolutely no brown ones. And that's great. Now, what's crazily interesting about this to me is that is something super simple, super testable. It's absolutely digital in terms of it's yes or no, black or white. There either are brown M&Ms or there's not brown M&Ms. But what did that mean to Van Halen? Well, it's really simple. If you had brown M&Ms in the bowl whenever they got there, they did not believe that the venue had read the contract and read all the security stuff that went through it. So they absolutely refused to go on in the gig. What they had done is they had taken this 20-page contract full of really hard security stuff, and they turned it into a really simple process where on every page they had one of these such commands so that it was easily testable, completely frictionless, and a very small process for any member of Van Halen or their road crew to walk straight in and look for that one thing that was their job. They had a repeatable pattern of excellence that ensured that they got the best gig possible. On the 30th of March, 1980, in someplace in Colorado in the USA, they walked on in, and the very first thing that Eddie Van Halen had seen was a huge ton of brown M&Ms in this bowl. So, being the rock legends that they were, they completely kicked off and destroyed the dressing room. When they were refusing to go on, the venue owner had called them out on it, said he was going to sue them. As that conversation was happening, the rig on the entire university playing field caved in on itself, causing £8.5 million worth of damage, and would have killed anyone within 30 feet of it at that point in time. Now, no one was hurt, and that's really obviously a great thing. But it's crazy to me that we have started this wonderful approach to digital transformation, and we have taken it from an agile perspective from the end of the 70s, where in Honda, new doors were brought out by having a sticker on them, rather than having an old-school warehouse process, or the likes of Van Halen, where they were simply testing for brown M&Ms in order to see whether their rig was securely put up. There we go. As you can see, it's really clear to see straight away. The color looks different. It's so frictionless, it's so small, it's so simple, it's so repeatable, and it doesn't require a computer at all. I bring it back to this point that I said at the start. The quality of my life is the quality of my communication. From every single thing we do, from the way we talk to others, the way they talk to us, from the way we talk to ourselves on a personal level and a business level, it is the driving factor behind digital transformation. From the Van Halen example, those brown M&Ms communicated not only that the person didn't read the contract, but there was a good chance that they weren't detail-orientated enough in order to match the security of that huge rig. There's a friend of mine called Matt Stauffer, who's very big in the Laravel community, and he runs a 4-person company. And last week he put out a new job advert in order to get new applicants. And at the bottom of the advert it says, when you reply to the advert, please either mention what your cat's name is or what your favorite animal is. And it was at bold at the bottom. 210 people applied in the first month. 3 people mentioned their cat's name. These simple processes that we have are not there to catch people out. It's simply there to work out the detail-orientated people from those that are not detail-orientated. It's breaking down simple systems to make your life easier. The fact that you do them on Twitter or you can do them on mobile apps, that may speed things up, but it's not the core of what digital transformation is. So digital transformation is not, and I have to stress this because you will see it a lot over the next coming days, how everything ties in. It's not mobile apps, it's not social media, it's not open source technology, it's not the ability to use CMSs to run web pages, even though that's awesome. It's not the embracement of Agile, even though Agile should be embraced for every development technology. It's not the fact that we're moving to mobile in any way. It's not. Digital transformation in itself is A very small, simple ruling. Digital transformation is not a noun. It is not a thing that we will achieve at some stage. It is not a goal that we can then turn off and go home. It is not the building of something. It is the constant doing of something. It is to transform in a digital way, in a very testable, clear fashion. It is a verb. Digital transformation is the act of removing friction and uncertainty from the smallest of processes and replacing them with data-driven, repeatable patterns of excellence. It's a very quick talk to get you started on this morning. Thank you very much. My name has been Kevin Gallager. I look forward to answering your questions on Twitter.